introduction. As Jan said, I will be discussing some simple ways that you can improve your GAP score. And again, I'm Amanda Zayas. I'm a lead content strategist on GOVTA's Digital Services and Solutions team. A big part of my job is to partner with agencies to improve overall user experience. Here's just a quick look at what we'll cover today. We'll talk about what the GAP score actually is, how it's determined, and what you can do to improve yours. But first off, what exactly is the GAP program? So the Georgia Analytics Program, or GAP, is a shared initiative between the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget and the Georgia Technology Authority. And it aims to enable state agencies to make data-driven decisions. And what that means is that it's a way to quantify the performance of your website in three key areas: quality assurance, or what I'll be referring to as QA, accessibility, and SEO. And we've sent a benchmark score of 80 for all Georgia state agency websites, but we urge you to push beyond that. So that's why the poll was, are you above 80? Are you below 80? Do you not know? Because that's the benchmark that we're asking all agencies to hit. And you can actually see your agency's GAP score and how it compares to all the other GovHub agencies at analytics.georgia.gov. That's always changing, so you can always go there and see how you currently stack up against other agencies. So your overall GAP score is made up of the scores for QA, accessibility, and SEO. And your website is assessed for issues like user-facing characteristics like broken links, documents, media that might need to be updated, misspellings, hard to read copy, accessibility, or how easy your website is to navigate for people with disabilities like maybe vision loss, hearing loss, or motor function issues. And then how easy your content is to find when people are searching in external search engines like Google. Now, why are these numbers important? It's a useful way to quantify your digital performance. It means for you that delivering a great digital experience doesn't have to be this kind of guessing game. You have real data to assess and act on. And GAP scores give you kind of a glimpse into how well your website is serving your audience or your audiences. And it provides a great starting point and helpful guide to thinking about your user's overall experience. And also, it's a really easy KPI that you can measure over time. It's a great benchmark to have. And you can also share it with leadership, show leadership, and it's a quantifiable way to show them the progress that you've made. So right now, your GAP score might be below the threshold. I know we did see some people for whom that was the case. You might be right on the edge, or you might have been doing well and maybe it dropped. So no matter where you are on that spectrum, there are ways to improve your score right now. So first of all, if your GAP score has fallen or if you're below 80, don't panic. Just view this as a really great opportunity to dig into your site and address those important issues. So start by looking for low-hanging fruit. So these are low-effort tasks that will gain you points very quickly, and they can be dealing with small things like broken links, outdated documents, old media files, images that are too large, or low content pages. And once you've addressed kind of those smaller, easier to tackle issues, that's when you can get into larger content initiatives like content audit, analyzing user flow, and looking at your reading levels. So we urge you to take on initiatives like those and go beyond just the numbers that you see in Siteimprove. Because while a GAP score and Siteimprove are helpful tools, they're merely a starting point. They're a quantifiable indicator, but also it's a mental framework to get you to think about the bigger picture. So don't just kind of click around and clear a few issues to improve your score and then just leave it at that. Take the time to really go deeper and look at your digital presence holistically. Decide what's important, really give it that human touch. So, and think about what issues and themes are arising when you look at your gap score components. Chances are there will be some issues that you see over and over again. So think about, what is that telling you about your site's user experience? And there are also some decisions that you make that may not drastically improve or affect your score, but it will really improve the content and the user experience, and is absolutely worth the time that you're going to put into it. So Mary touched on this a little bit earlier, but if you haven't done it in a while or ever, definitely consider doing a content audit. We do work with agencies to perform these, but these are absolutely things that you can do on your own. So we crawl for all public-facing content and then work with agencies to make the decision to keep, delete, combine, or split up the content that's there. So this is a way for you to assess everything on your site and decide if you still really need it. So is that content still relevant? Is it up to date? Are there old documents you can clear out? Can some of the content, is there too much? Does it maybe need to be split up? Or can some low content pages or something without a lot of content on them be combined with other content on the same topic? And over time, content piles up, and this is a good way to stay on top of what you have published, just like decluttering your home. Like, things pile up, and then you kind of need to go and do a clear out occasionally. And as Mary said, it's really going to depend on how frequently you do it, is really going to depend on what your agency needs are, what your bandwidth is, really. But generally, we recommend doing it maybe about once a year. So once you've compiled all of your content and you begin making these decisions, it's helpful to assess your content's performance. So what are some of your most popular and least popular pages? Are users bouncing from the page? Why might that be? How long do users stay on the page? And does that make sense given the content that's there? And where are they coming from, and where are they going to next? So digging into how users interact with your content can help you make decisions during your content audit process. And definitely take a look at some of your lowest performing pages. This is something you can do right in Siteimprove, and figure out maybe what's going on there. So is there an obvious reason for it? Maybe do you really need it? Can it be combined with other relevant, more visible content? Or are you just okay with it not getting a lot of eyes? Because there is some content that is not meant for a wide audience. It's maybe very specific, or even we have a lot of agencies who have to have content up for compliance purposes, but it's not necessarily something a lot of people are going to be looking at. We do find often that individual news items are often low performers, but they're not intended to have a wide reach. They're maybe for a very specific segment of, say, press or something like that. So if it's a situation like that where low visitor numbers are expected for a valid reason, there's no problem with leaving the content there. Then look into your top entry and exit pages and start to picture what common user flows look like on your site. So where are those users coming from? Where are they going to next? What does that tell you about their success rate and overall experience? So is the next or previous step in the path maybe suggesting that their experience difficulty completing that task? Are they jumping around? Are they spending a lot of time on a particular page? Really start to look at what that flow looks like for users. And as you think about those common user paths, you can take that a step further by setting up user journey tracking in Siteimprove. Maybe select a few major tasks that your audience might be trying to complete, and pick a point A where they start and a point B where they end. And you can track how users move, where they might be getting lost, where they're jumping around, and maybe make some adjustments in your content from there. And you can also set up funnels within Siteimprove for specific paths that you want users to move through. So maybe like registering for an event or applying for a license, and figure out where they're dropping out. So one example is an agency that we worked with where we found out they had a 25% completion rate for an application, and they asked us to look into it because they said, we don't know where this is kind of going wrong. And in examining that user flow, we noticed that almost all users who dropped did so on one page in the process. And when we looked at that page, it listed what the application was for and what identification and information the user would need. So we looked at that and we said, actually, that content is successful because it's weeding out users this wasn't relevant for or who weren't ready to complete the application. So it showed us but it did show us that that page might be more useful being shown earlier in the process. And then you can then start looking at your site kind of as users see it and analyzing the content on specific pages. So think about finding information or completing a task from a user's perspective. Sometimes what's really helpful is to get somebody in your agency who doesn't work on the website and give them a specific task to complete and have them report back to you on how easy or difficult they found it. So is looking at your content, are you seeing that content is buried? Are there competing calls to action? Are all the information and resources and documents together on one page with easy instructions, or does a user have to click around to find all of that information? So one example is here we see Department of Revenue's tax information, and it's really clearly laid out. That's great. They divided calls to actions for 3 audiences. So if you're an individual, if you're someone representing a business, or if you're a tax professional, there is a clear call to action for you to take. This is for me, this is where I'm going to go. And that's great. But then we see underneath that a bunch of calls to action, and they're all kind of prioritized at the same level. So maybe we want to look into, do we think these are competing with each other? Do we think they're competing with the audience-based approach from above? And at the bottom, we also see the deadline for filing state taxes. And we say, do we think that should be higher or more prominent as we get closer to that deadline? So that's something that maybe you look into the data and that can tell you. So you use the data that you find in Siteimprove and then look at the content and assess it in this way with objective eyes to improve your site. Also, keep in mind that most users often don't come through your homepage. Most GovHub sites' #1 traffic source is internal search, and that takes them directly to interior pages. So that being the case, have you thought about the context if a user is just seeing that one page and they haven't gone through kind of your intended user flow? So if I'm a user coming to an interior page of your website from Google, is that single page about a particular topic or a particular task going to make sense to me? So here we have an example of OCI. They do a great job of this with their service pages, and all the information is there. It's on one page. There's a step-by-step how do I laid out, and there's a clear call to action as to what to do next. So I didn't need any other information. I didn't need to click around. It's all there for me, and I know where I need to go after this. And another factor to consider, and one that definitely affects your GAP score in multiple ways, is your site's reading level. Georgia agency websites should aim for roughly a junior high reading level, but we do know that many agencies have special, highly educated, knowledgeable audiences like doctors, nurses, attorneys, real estate agents, insurance agents, and so on. So that's naturally going to increase your reading level when you have to write about topics with a lot of specificity and technical jargon. However, there are always ways to make your content more easily read and understood, even when you have to use that kind of terminology. So in this example, we see that the phrase combustible dust will have to be used, and that's going to increase your reading level. You can't help that. But sentences here could be made shorter. Paragraphs could be broken up. A sentence doesn't really have to read, the office prescribes technical requirements related to building and construction, and so on. There's shorter, simpler ways to state that. And definitely remember that more verbose does not mean more formal or more official. It's much better to have copy be short, simple, and easy to understand. We also urge you to go further on accessibility, even if your score is strong. We love to see so many strong accessibility scores, but there's always more that you can do. This ensures that everyone can access your agency's information and services. So consider whether you've addressed those important issues. Have you named your documents and images in a clear way? Have you provided understandable, descriptive alt text for those images? Is there text on your graphics? Because if there is, do you provide a text alternative for it that can be easily read by a screen reader with live text? And do the videos on your website have closed captioning available by default? Finally, with such a large segment of the population viewing agency content on mobile devices, have you thought about how your content displays on mobile? I know often we're creating and editing on desktops and laptops, and it's easy to forget that many users only have access to mobile devices like their phone. So take a look at the mobile experience for your site. Often third-party applications that I know a lot of agencies use can be very tricky to use on something like a phone. And one example is when we rolled out a redesign for Georgia.gov, we noticed we have a lot of service pages, and we noticed that on these pages, on mobile, the call to action stacks actually above the additional information. So we had to go through all of those services and make sure it made sense contextually when it was laid out that way. So if you're not reading that additional information, the call to action would still make sense to you if that was all you saw or if it's what you saw first. As you work on your site, we definitely urge you to stay committed. The gap score, just like your website, is a moving target that needs regular attention. As your website changes, your gap score will change, and you should always be thinking about how changes and additions affect the user. And changes to Siteimprove and how it functions and how it measures your content are going to affect your score as well, even if you've done nothing to change the website. Siteimprove is great about figuring out how to more accurately take measurements or get more detailed information. So even if you've done nothing, Siteimprove might be updating and you want to stay on top of that score. But luckily, you are not alone as you work to improve your website and your gap score. Our team has plenty of options to support you. If you have a specific question about an issue, you can submit a ticket through our support desk. Siteimprove has an excellent knowledge base and training resources, as well as ongoing learning opportunities. I definitely urge you to take advantage of those. They're great. The digital services and solutions team will actually be proactively reaching out to agencies below that 80-point threshold to provide some suggestions about quickly improving their score. And if you'd like to discuss a more holistic approach to improving several factors in your gap score, you can contact our team and we may be able to perform a brief gap analysis for you. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm excited to see your results. And I'm going to hand it back over to Yen if we have time for questions.
We do have a question, Amanda. You did touch on this, though. I was asking about how to improve accessibility and SEO gap scores in particular. And I think that kind of goes towards that. The QA ones are like seems easier to like understand what to do. But with accessibility and SEO, there's, I don't know, what more can we do around that?
Well, so the good news is a lot of these are intertwined. So things that might help your accessibility can help your SEO because Google's looking at that in particular, or fixing broken links can help some of your SEO scores. So the good news is you get kind of a lot of bang for your buck if you start addressing these. In terms of accessibility, definitely go in, see your key issues. When you go into Siteimprove, it's going to tell you what's going to get you the most points. Focus on things that you can actually control. You'll see that some of it is something that only maybe like developers or somebody can do. That's not really something you're going to be able to do on your own. So look at like more content related things that you can address. Some of the most common things I see are that alt text, how you're naming your images. I see a lot of text on graphics, which people are not, if they are using a screen reader, they're not going to be able to read that. In terms of SEO, the biggest thing you can do is you are getting a huge bump by being an official government website. And also, it's kind of baked into the platform a lot. Like GovHub does a lot for you. You do not have to worry about those keywords. All the content is structured. That's going to help so much. What you really need to focus on is keeping your content relevant, well written, and up to date and accessible. So just really work on making that high quality, relevant content, keeping it fresh. That's the best thing that you can do for SEO. And definitely go through and see some of those items that maybe you can kind of knock out quickly out of Siteimprove. But SEO, a lot of that is baked into GovHub.
Awesome. And if you don't see those scores going up and you feel like you've done all that you could, reach out to us, right, Manda? And we can do a little analysis and help you out, get you started, keep going further.
Absolutely. And like I said,
Yeah.
there's going to be some issues that agencies can't do anything about. Talk to us about that. We're going to figure out some other options for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.